The ground shook so hard that the crate in my arms nearly slipped and shattered on the floor. Somewhere behind me, a wall of solid metal folded like paper, and a voice on my earpiece screamed at me to run before I became the next crushed piece of scrap on this outpost. I did not run. My name is Ethan Cole, and until that moment, I was just a food supply technician on a mining colony called Outpost 9, floating on the edge of an ice moon nobody back home could even find on a star map. My job was boring. Count the food. Store the food. Serve the food. That was supposed to be the whole story of my life out here. Then the drilling charge went off near the northern ridge, and everything changed in a single breath. Nobody had known there was a nest under that ridge. Nobody had known that a creature the size of a transport ship was sleeping there with her mate, guarding 3 young ones who could not yet fly. When the charge exploded, the shelf of ice collapsed, and her mate never came out from under the rubble. She came out, alone, and she was furious. For 3 days, she tore through the outpost, screaming through the corridors, breathing fire hot enough to melt steel doors, hunting for the ones who had taken her mate away. The colonists called her a dragon, because there was no better word for a creature with wings that could cut a shuttle in half and a roar that could shatter glass from 100 meters away. Everyone ran. Every single time she came near, the corridors emptied in seconds. Guards dropped their weapons. Engineers left their tools behind. Even Voranth, the outpost supervisor, a man who once wrestled a broken reactor into submission with his bare hands, hid behind a supply crate the moment her shadow crossed a doorway. I was carrying a crate of food paste to the shelter when I turned the corner and saw her. She was standing over the wreckage of what used to be our greenhouse, wings spread wide, smoke curling from her nostrils, her eyes glowing like 2 furnaces about to erupt. And underneath her, tucked into the broken metal, 3 small shapes were crying, not roaring like their mother, just crying, the way any hungry, frightened baby cries when it does not understand why its world has fallen apart. My earpiece was screaming at me to turn back. I turned it off instead. I do not know why I did what I did next. Maybe it was something from my childhood, growing up on a small farm where my father taught me that a frightened animal does not need to be feared, it needs to be understood. He used to say that panic spreads faster than fire, but so does calm, if you are brave enough to offer it first. So I got down on one knee, in full view of the most dangerous creature any of us had ever seen, and I opened the crate. The smell of food paste drifted into the air, thick and sweet. The nearest baby's head snapped toward me so fast that it nearly tumbled over its siblings. The mother's head turned too, slowly. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. She took 1 step toward me, then another, until her breath rolled over my skin like heat from an open furnace door. I did not run. I squeezed a line of paste onto my palm and held it toward the babies, not toward her. Because somewhere in my mind, past all the fear, I understood something simple. She was not a monster. She was a mother who had lost her partner and was terrified for the only family she had left. The nearest baby lunged forward and licked the paste from my hand, making a small sound that was almost a purr. The enormous mother above us went completely still. I kept my hands slow and steady. I fed 1 baby, then the next, then the last, while the biggest set of eyes I had ever seen studied every single move I made. I will admit something honestly. I was terrified. My hands were shaking so badly that some of the paste spilled onto the floor, but being afraid and being foolish are not the same thing. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is exactly the opposite of what their instincts are screaming at them to do. She lowered her massive head until 1 glowing eye, rimmed with old scars, was less than an arm's length from my face. I forced myself to stay still and let her look at me, let her smell the food on my hands and whatever fear still lingered on my skin. "I know," I said quietly, even though I doubted she understood a single word. "I know you lost him. I did not do this to you. I am only feeding your children. That is all this is." A low sound rumbled from deep in her chest, a sound that was not a growl. It felt like something else entirely, something heavy with grief rather than rage. Then, slowly, the tension in her body began to fade. Her wings, which had been raised like blades ready to strike, folded gently around her babies instead of around a fight. I stayed there for what felt like hours, feeding those 3 little ones every last drop from that crate, while dozens of colonists watched from broken doorways, too shocked to even speak. It took nearly 2 hours before Dr. Grace Whitfield, the Outpost's only expert on the native wildlife of that moon, finally arrived from the shelter bay. She had studied creatures like this dragon for years, but had never once dared to get within 30 meters of an angry adult. She stood frozen in the doorway, staring at me sitting calmly beside the most feared creature on the entire moon. "You must be out of your mind," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you understand what you just did?" "I understand that she was scared," I said, gently scraping the last bit of paste from the crate for the smallest baby. She was not trying to destroy this outpost. She was trying to protect the only family she had left. Everyone forgot that being frightened and being evil are 2 very different things. Grace did not have an answer for that. Nobody did. From that day forward, the dragon, whom the colonists eventually named Ember, never fully trusted the rest of the crew. But she trusted me. For months after that day, she let me come near her nest every single morning. She let me help her find food for her growing babies. On the coldest nights, she let me sit beside her, resting against her massive side, the same way you might sit beside a grieving friend who simply needed company. The outpost commander wanted to write a report accusing me of reckless behavior. Voranth wanted me sent for a full medical evaluation, convinced that nobody in their right mind would walk toward a furious dragon carrying nothing but a crate of food paste. But results speak louder than fear. The outpost now had a peaceful, even protective guardian, instead of a grieving predator tearing the walls apart, and 3 young dragons who were growing up believing that humans were the ones who showed up with kindness when everyone else ran away. I think about that day often, not because of the danger, but because of everyone who ran. Every living creature on that outpost had instincts screaming at them that fire, fury, and grief meant only one thing: escape as fast as possible. I had something different guiding me that day. A simple lesson from a small farm on Earth, telling me that frightened creatures do not need people who run. They need someone brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to sit down and stay. Months later, when it was time for me to leave Outpost 9 and return home, I walked to the nest one final time. Ember's 3 babies were nearly the size of transport pods themselves, strong enough now to fly short distances on their own. Ember lowered her head toward me, the same way she had that very first day, and let out a low sound, gentle this time, nothing like the fury I had first witnessed. I placed my hand against the side of her enormous head, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. "Take care of them," I whispered. She did not answer with words, because she could not, but she stayed still and let me say goodbye, and that was answer enough. As my shuttle lifted off the icy surface of that moon, I watched 3 young dragons rise into the sky beside their mother for the very first time, gliding through clouds of frozen mist, finally free and finally safe. I never became a hero back home. I never wrote a book about it, and I never gave any interviews about the day I sat down instead of running. But every single time I close my eyes, I remember the weight of that crate in my arms, the heat of her breath against my skin, and the simple truth that changed everything that day. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stay calm when everyone else chooses fear. And sometimes, all it takes to change the course of history is one small crate of food, one steady hand, and the courage to sit down instead of running away.